So I have a proof of concept that I'd like you to evaluate. We at GoTAFE have, at the moment, 5 existing themes. These themes are very similar to each other. They only really differ in the content that's displayed in the top banner. Also, the organisation has had a refresh of their public website. So I'm considering a new theme based on Clean Theme to bring the design elements across. So this is it. You can see at the moment, it's very, very simple, really. There's a space where the branding is displayed. In this case, it's just the GoTAFE banner, and a space where the title of this Moodle course is also displayed. Those features sort of come with Clean, particularly the display of the title. But there's some interesting smarts that I've now built in through including a small snippet of JavaScript that can actually determine where in the category structure this course exists. So if I, for instance, were to move this into a different category, I'm just going to go into Edit Settings and shift this now into one of our sub-branded areas and save this. You might notice now that the logo here has changed. It's adapted to the content. In fact, what is happening is that this is using exactly the same theme. I haven't changed themes at all, but there's a little bit of script that is running that's basically looking to the breadcrumbs, extracting the sub-branding, and adding the logo here. So if I now do that one more time, I'll now move it into this category here, save and display, and you'll notice it now has another logo again. So in essence, one theme is doing the function of what would previously have 5 individual themes. And of course, we all know that having 5 themes means 5 times the maintenance and 5 times the cost. So there's some efficiencies here. And there's less overhead as well, because really to have 5 themes just to change the banner out is a bit wasteful. So that's the first piece of work. But because that scripting now exists, I can exploit it to do much more functional stuff for GoTAFE. So for example, we have a naming convention that includes within it the unit code or codes if it was a cluster, and also the year of delivery. So I'm just going to mock that up. So it's separated by a colon, and then we put the year in the back end, so 2007 in brackets. And I'm going to copy that into the short name as well. Save and display. So now it's actually taken that name and broken it up. It displays the descriptive title here, the code it has extracted, and the year of delivery, which it displays in a little peel over on the right-hand side. I'll extend that a little bit further. Imagine this is no longer a single unit of competency, but a cluster. We do that by using pipes to separate the different unit codes. Again, I'm going to copy that down here. Paste that. Oops. Paste that in, save the display. You'll notice now that it's basically extracted those. It now reads codes because there's more than one of them. It's split them. It's put an ampersand between the second last and last one. You can do a little bit more again. I'm going to do this one more time. There are 2 other elements that are often included in the naming convention. The first of these is the audience. So there might be different audiences for this content. For example, wine, the wine group might be one of the audiences. So I put that into the brackets with a comma as a separator. Save and display. And now it displays as an audience in the banner as well. And one last little cherry on top is that we have in development subjects, effectively our works in progress, and we encode those by putting ID into the number. So now it reads ID 17, for example. So I'll just paste that in to both fields. Save and display. And you'll notice now that this has changed it to kind of a little banner, I guess, a little sort of badge that flags it as being in development. So we very quickly can spot those subjects that are still in development and not for student delivery. And in essence, what is happening is there's a bit of JavaScript that's running that's taking apart the breadcrumbs that you can see here. So it extracts the category to perform the badging, and it takes the descriptive title and breaks that down based on a set of recipes. So I'm going to show you behind the skin now. Here's the JavaScript. It's fairly light. I've put a lot of comments into this just to help disambiguate it a bit. But really, if I was to minify it, it's only a handful of lines of code. It's less than a kilobyte. So it's a pretty light overhead to achieve the sort of sub-branding, much more than, I guess it's much lighter than having 5 themes. So let's have a look at the human readable version of this. The first thing is it uses jQuery, because jQuery is core to Moodle, so why not? It then looks to the breadcrumbs and it pulls them apart. And fortunately for us, Moodle has put some nice little handles that we can grab upon. So it looks to spans which have an item prop which equals title. That happens to be each one of these. And it builds an array of them. So now we have an array of our items in our breadcrumbs. And if we look to the item 2 in our breadcrumbs, remembering that it starts with 0, so 0, 1, 2, there's our sub-branding. So we can pull apart our branding and say, if the branding matches one of our sub-brandings, let's use that. Otherwise, we're just going to use the main or the default styling. So that, in essence, allows us then to swap the badging of this. So it then takes the information that's extracted above and it adds that as a class to the header, this area up here. It's the div that surrounds all of this, which we can then use CSS to decorate later and to swap out the images. If I go further down, the next challenge is to take the descriptive title. That's this that you can see in this component of the breadcrumbs. Again, there's a nice little hook for us to grab upon, so I'm just looking to things where there's an anchor which has an attribute of title, and I'm choosing that. The only one of those is the one that includes the descriptive title. And then I've got a regular expression, which are often easier to write than they are to read. But basically what it does is it captures 3 bits. The first bit it captures, the first capture group, is everything before the colon. So that's effectively the codes. It then captures everything between that colon and the last opening parentheses. So it's basically the descriptive title. And then the last thing that it captures is everything within the parentheses. And then there's an if statement. It's a really important if statement. Basically says, if it matches that naming convention, do something, otherwise do nothing. So what that really is it basically makes this very light, because unless a course has been named using the naming convention, it's going to do nothing. And it won't bother to even process everything that's within that if statement. So that makes it much, much quicker to load and to run. So the first thing it does is to take the first element of the first capture group and pull it apart on the pipe symbol. So what that really means is if there is more than one code, make an array of all the codes. Then it basically says, if there's only one thing in that array, therefore it's a single unit of competency, build some HTML that has the code inside it. So it says building some HTML, which includes the word code, colon, and then put the code that it extracted into that. Otherwise, it's more than one unit of competency. Otherwise, I guess you can consider it a cluster of competency. So let's break up those clusters and display them as a string. And so in short, basically what this does is it puts the word codes in and it goes through that array, it joins them with commas, and if it's the second to last item, it then puts in the ampersand symbol and then the last item. So code 1, comma code 2, and code 3, for example. All right. It then adds that to the heading. So it's basically adding it below in this area here. Lovely. Moving on. The next thing it does is to simply update the heading, this major heading here, with the title text. So basically that's the second element in the array. And the the last thing that it does is it extracts whatever was within the brackets. So whatever was in this. So that could include two elements. It will include the year always, but it also includes an optional element, which is the audience. So the first thing it does is to split that up based upon the comma, which is our separator for that. So if the array is equal to 1, that basically means that there's only one item, which is the year, and so it basically extracts that year. If the array is longer than that, it must also include an audience. And so we basically build a little bit of HTML that creates the audience as displayed here. And the final thing that it does is to determine whether in the year that was extracted earlier on, whether it also includes the, starts with the first two characters of that year, the in development codification. So remember, that means ID means in development for us. And if that's true, wrap it in basically a Bootstrap panel. So it's using Bootstrap because, again, Bootstrap's already built into Moodle, so why not? So it basically wraps the year that was already displayed here in this in development panel and adds the words in development to that. So I know there's a lot going on in that, but it's worthwhile just looking at the various moving parts, and particularly to see whether there's any sort of weaknesses in my logic that might prove to be problematic downstream. Thanks for your time.